The first thing she told them was not to quit their jobs. That surprised people. Most talks that promised a way out always started with urgency, with declarations, with bold claims. She didn't do that. She stood at the front of a borrowed community room, hands folded loosely, and looked at the small group like she was counting something only she could see. "This won't make you rich," she said calmly, "but it will make your life quieter." That got their attention. There were 6 of them. People who knew how much milk cost. People who could tell time by bill due dates. People who lived one unexpected expense away from panic. She didn't ask them to introduce themselves. She already knew enough. Instead, she reached down and placed 3 objects on the folding table in front of her. An old cordless drill with a cracked casing, a stack of mismatched ceramic mugs, a shoebox full of tangled cables and adapters. "Most people walk past these," she said. "They assume someone else already decided they were useless." She picked up the drill and turned it over in her hands. "This still works," she said, "but more importantly, it still belongs somewhere." A few people exchanged looks. She smiled faintly. "That's what you're going to learn," she continued. "Not how to sell things. How to recognize what hasn't finished being useful yet." They met twice a week after that. She never called it a class. She called it practice. She took them to thrift stores first, then flea markets, then early morning garage sales where people were too tired to haggle and too eager to clear space. She showed them how to listen, how sellers talked about objects, how they avoided certain words, how they lingered on others. "This isn't about bargains," she told them once quietly, while a single mother held a chipped casserole dish. "It's about neglect." Money came slowly at first, $20, $30. Enough for groceries without anxiety, then more. The older man paid off a credit card he'd been hiding from his wife. The young woman quit one of her 3 jobs. The couple stopped fighting over every purchase. They began to look at her differently, like she was something between a teacher and a lifeline. That was when she added the rule. "When your life stops feeling fragile," she said one evening, "you teach someone else." A pause. "Not later. Not when you feel like it. When you're stable." Someone laughed softly. "Like, pay it forward?" She shook her head. "No," she said. "Forward implies optional." The room went quiet. "This only works if things keep moving," she added. "Money, knowledge, objects." She looked at each of them in turn. "If you keep what you've been given," she said, "it changes." "What changes?" someone asked. She hesitated. "Value," she said finally. They nodded. They thought they understood. And at first everything went exactly the way she said it would. She never told them to look for antiques. That was another surprise. "Antiques attract attention," she said. "Attention drives competition." Instead, she showed them shelves most people ignored. Outdated kitchen appliances with missing manuals, power tools that looked ugly but solid, medical and mobility items tucked behind clothing racks, old board games missing pieces that could be sold separately, instruction booklets, replacement parts, specialty cables. "People throw away usefulness before they throw away function," she told them. She taught them how to check model numbers with their phones, how to spot items discontinued just long enough to become hard to replace, how to recognize things people didn't want anymore, but still needed. She showed them what not to buy. No cracked plastics under stress, no electronics that smelled burnt, no trendy items with short lifespans. "Trends die," she said. "Needs don't." They learned where to sell quietly, online marketplaces that catered to niche buyers, local listings for people who didn't want shipping delays, small forums and groups built around hobbies and repairs, sometimes just word of mouth. She never mentioned going viral. "This isn't about scale," she said. "It's about circulation." They started bringing her items they were unsure about. A sewing machine foot found loose in a bin, a box of old keys, obsolete phone chargers. She didn't always answer right away. Sometimes she'd ask, "Who would need this?" Other times, "Who would be relieved to find this?" The answers changed everything. They stopped seeing junk. They started seeing interruptions, places where something useful had been abandoned too early. And slowly, without realizing it, They began to understand what she really meant. This wasn't about selling, it was about returning things to the right hands. The money didn't come all at once. That was the first thing she warned them about. "This isn't lottery money," she said. "It's relief money." And she was right. The first sale came from the older man, a box of replacement printer cartridges he'd bought for $4 at a garage sale because the seller thought they were obsolete. They weren't. He sold them online to a small business owner for $87. He brought the screenshot to the next meeting like it was proof of life. "I checked the model numbers like you said," he told her. "There were still people looking for them." She nodded. People don't stop needing things just because stores stop carrying them. After that, it snowballed. The young woman found a bread machine at a thrift store for $10. It was bulky, ugly, yellowed with age. She almost left it behind, but it worked. She cleaned it, listed it locally, and sold it 2 days later for $120 to someone who'd been looking for that exact model. The single mother found vintage Pyrex lids, just the lids, in a bin marked miscellaneous. $5. She sold them separately and made nearly $200. The couple learned to look for old stereo receivers, camera lenses, sewing machine attachments, mobility aids, specialty cookware, power tool batteries, replacement remotes, original instruction manuals, things that didn't look valuable, things that weren't trendy, things people didn't want to move with. They sold quietly. Online marketplaces, local listings, small hobby groups, repair forums. They didn't chase viral buyers. They found people who were relieved. Within weeks, the change was obvious. Groceries without anxiety, bills paid early, a cushion where there had never been one. The older man stopped checking his bank account every morning. The single mother slept through the night. Someone joked that it felt like they'd unlocked a cheat code. That's when she reminded them of the rule. "When your life stops feeling fragile," she said, "you teach someone else." Some of them nodded eagerly. They talked about sisters, cousins, friends. Others smiled but said nothing. They were busy, they were tired. They wanted just a little more margin. That was when the items changed, not all at once, just enough to feel off. The single mother picked up a box at a flea market she couldn't explain. It wasn't valuable, it wasn't useful, it was just heavy. She didn't sell it. Couldn't. Every listing failed. The older man bought a set of tools that never stayed organized no matter how often he sorted them. Things went missing, then reappeared. At the next meeting, the woman noticed what they didn't say. "How's the teaching going?" she asked gently. Eyes dropped, hands fidgeted. No one answered. She looked at the items they'd brought in, and for the first time since this had started, her expression changed. Not angry, concerned. "This isn't what you were finding before," she said quietly. Someone laughed nervously. "It still makes money," they said. She shook her head. "No," she replied. "It makes problems." Silence settled in. She folded her hands. "When value stops moving," she said, "it doesn't disappear. It curdles." And that was when they realized something had gone wrong. Not with the market, not with the items, but with the agreement they thought they had more time to honor. What surprised them most wasn't how much money they made, it was how predictable it became. Once they learned what to look for, it stopped feeling like luck. The couple started keeping a running list on their phone. Things people skipped over, old toolboxes with intact latches, dehumidifiers and air purifiers with discontinued filters, vacuum attachments sold separately from the machine, medical braces and supports still sealed in packaging, coffee makers from brands that stopped supporting older models. They'd spend $40 on a Saturday morning and come home knowing they'd clear $300 or $400 by the end of the week. Not every time, but often enough to trust it. They learned timing mattered. Garage sales on the last day, estate sales right before closing, thrift stores midweek when shelves were reset and foot traffic was low. The woman never rushed them. "This isn't hunting," she reminded them. "It's noticing." The single mother paid off her overdraft fees completely. The older man fixed his car without putting it on a credit card. The young woman started setting aside money instead of bracing for emergencies. For the first time, they weren't just surviving. They were planning. That was when the question came up again. "When do we start teaching?" someone asked. The woman answered without hesitation. "When you stop checking your balance every morning," she said. A few of them laughed. A few of them didn't. And that difference didn't go unnoticed. It wasn't hard to tell who planned to teach and who didn't. Some people talked about it openly. They mentioned coworkers who were struggling, a sister who needed help, a neighbor who'd been laid off. Others stayed quiet. They listened. They nodded. They kept showing up with items that sold quickly and cleanly. The woman noticed both groups. She didn't comment. The first one to break the rule did it carefully. The couple, they had been the fastest learners. They understood margins, timing, demand. They stopped bringing lists to the meetings and started bringing receipts instead. Numbers circled in pen, 400 here, 600 there. Enough that they stopped worrying. Enough that the idea of teaching someone else began to feel inconvenient. "We're just not ready yet," the woman said when the question came up again. The teacher looked at her. "Ready for what?" she asked. "For sharing it," the woman replied. "We worked hard for this." The teacher didn't argue. She only asked one thing. "What have you been picking up lately?" The couple exchanged a look. "Estate stuff," the man said. "Bulk lots, whole garages." "Anything unusual?" the teacher asked. The man hesitated. "There was one thing," he said, "but it still sold." That night, the couple brought home a large wooden chest. They bought it cheap. Too cheap. The seller wouldn't meet their eyes. Just wanted it gone. It was heavier than it looked. The hinges screamed when they opened it. Inside were items that didn't match. A child's shoe, a bundle of letters tied with twine, an old calculator with the battery compartment corroded shut, and at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, a small metal bell. They listed the bell. It sold within minutes. The buyer never showed. Messages went unanswered. The money refunded itself. They listed it again. Same thing. Over and over, the chest stayed. The other items didn't sell at all, but they didn't stay put either. Things shifted, moved. The shoe appeared in different rooms. The letters unfolded themselves. The calculator began turning on without power. The man stopped sleeping. The woman began misplacing money. Real money. Cash withdrawn and never found. At the next meeting, they didn't bring receipts. They brought the bell. They set it on the table without ringing it. The teacher's expression changed the moment she saw it. "Where did this come from?" she asked. The woman spoke quickly. "It was part of a lot. We didn't know." "You knew," the teacher said calmly. "You just didn't ask." The room went silent. The man's voice cracked. "It won't leave," he said. We've tried." The teacher looked at them for a long moment. Then she said something she hadn't said before. "Have you taught anyone?" No one answered. She nodded once. "That's why it followed you home," she said. "It wasn't finished moving." Someone laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous," they said. "It's just stuff." The teacher met their eyes. "Then give it away," she said. The couple didn't. They couldn't. And that was when the bell rang on its own. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to be heard. And for the first time since this began, no one pretended they didn't feel it. No one touched the bell. They sat there staring at it as if waiting for someone else to decide what it meant. The teacher broke the silence. "Who else has something they didn't mean to bring home?" she asked. Chairs creaked, eyes dropped. The older man cleared his throat. "I found a cash box," he said quietly. "At a yard sale. It was empty." "Is it still?" the teacher asked. He shook his head. "No," he said. "Every morning there's money in it. Different bills. Always the same amount." "How much?" someone asked. "Enough," he replied. "Enough to make me feel like I shouldn't spend it." The single mother spoke next. "There's a mirror," she said. "I didn't buy it. It just came with a dresser. And the teacher prompted. I keep catching myself checking it, she said. Not my reflection. Behind me. The room felt smaller. The teacher listened without interrupting. When they were finished, she spoke. These things don't belong to you, she said. They belong to the space you created when you stopped passing things on. Someone scoffed. So what? They're cursed? They asked. The teacher shook her head. No, she said, they're stalled. She stood and picked up the bell carefully, as if it might burn her. When value stops moving, she said, it doesn't disappear. It looks for somewhere to sit. She placed the bell back down. You were supposed to be a bridge, she continued. Instead, you became a shelf. The couple stared at the chest in horror. Can we fix this? The woman whispered. The teacher met her eyes. Yes, she said, but not by selling. How? The man asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around the room. She wasn't looking at the bell. She was looking at the empty chairs, the ones that had been filled when this started, the ones that never came back. This didn't begin with you, she said quietly. No one spoke. They were listening now in a different way. I didn't invent this, she continued. I learned it the same way you did. She moved slowly around the room as she spoke, like pacing helped her remember. People have always traded what they don't understand the value of, she said. Objects, knowledge, labor, opportunity. She stopped near the table, and there have always been consequences when that trade stops flowing. Someone frowned. So, what is this? They asked. A rule? A curse? She shook her head. It's a balance, she said. One that doesn't care what you believe. She picked up the bell again, holding it carefully. This didn't come to you because you were greedy, she said. It came because you created space. She set it down. When you stop passing things on, she said, you don't stop the movement. You redirect it. The older man swallowed. So, we caused this? You interrupted it, she replied. And interruptions attract residue? The word hung there. Residue of what? Someone asked. She hesitated. Need, she said. Loss. Ownership without purpose. She looked around again. This system finds people who are good at recognizing value, she said, and it uses them. The room felt colder. You mean us, the single mother whispered. Yes, the teacher said, and before you ask, it doesn't let you quit. A sharp inhale moved through the group. What happens if we don't fix this? The man asked. The teacher met his eyes. Then the items escalate, she said. They become louder, heavier, more demanding. And if we try to get rid of them? They'll return, she replied, or be replaced. Someone laughed weakly. So what? We're stuck with haunted junk now? The teacher shook her head. No, she said, you're stuck with responsibility. She folded her hands. The solution is simple, she said. Not easy, simple. She looked at each of them in turn. You teach, she said. You pass on what you've learned. You keep value moving. And if we don't? Someone asked, her voice dropped. Then you become a storage point, she said, and storage fills. The bell rang again. No one flinched this time. They were past disbelief now. The single mother spoke softly. You said you learned this the hard way. The teacher nodded. I kept everything, she said, for a long time. No one asked what it had cost her. They didn't need to. She gathered her things and moved toward the door. I'll give you 1 week, she said. Start teaching. Not perfectly, just honestly. She paused. If you feel resistance, she added, pay attention to what's showing up in your house. Then she left them there, with the bell, with the chest, with the quiet understanding that the system didn't need their agreement, only their participation. No one left right away. They sat there listening to the hum of the building, the distant sound of traffic outside. The bell didn't ring again. That was worse. The older man was the first to stand. I'll teach, he said quickly. I know people who could use this. The single mother nodded. So do I. The couple didn't move. They were staring at the chest. The woman swallowed. "We just need time," she said. "We've already given so much." The older man looked at her. "You gave knowledge," he said. "You didn't give it away." The couple didn't answer. They left together, carrying the bell wrapped in a jacket. That night, the man dreamed of shelves, endless shelves, every object he'd ever touched stacked neatly, waiting. When he woke up, his hands smelled like old metal. The woman found the letters spread across the kitchen table, opened, read. Some of them mentioned her name. She didn't recognize the handwriting. The single mother woke to find the mirror from the dresser standing in the hallway, angled toward her bedroom. She hadn't moved it. The older man heard the cash box open at dawn. Bills spilling onto the floor, the same amount as before, enough to be tempting, enough to feel wrong. By morning, messages started coming in. Small things, questions, confessions. "Something followed me home. I can't get rid of this. It keeps coming back." And beneath all of it, one unspoken realization settled over them. The system had already begun to separate them. Not by money, by choice. The couple didn't come to the next meeting. They sent a message instead. "We're taking a break. We need to focus on our own situation for a while. No explanation, no apology." The woman read it twice, then set her phone down. "They've chosen," she said quietly. No one asked what that meant. They already knew. The older man began teaching the following weekend. He showed a neighbor how to check model numbers on old appliances. The single mother helped a coworker list medical supports and replacement parts. The young woman walked a friend through her first flea market, pointing out what to ignore and what to linger on. As they taught, the items in their homes changed. The mirror stopped moving, the cash box stayed closed, the strange weight in their houses began to lift slowly, like pressure easing after a storm. The couple's house did not change. The chest grew heavier, not physically, emotionally. They stopped opening it. They stopped sleeping. New items appeared without explanation. A register drawer in the laundry room, a stack of unsent letters in the hall closet, a child's backpack they didn't own, hanging on the back of a chair. They tried to sell again. Nothing moved. Buyers vanished, listings corrupted, messages arrived blank. Then the bell began ringing at night. Once at first, then twice, always at the same time. The man started sleeping in the living room. The woman kept losing track of money, not spending it, misplacing it, finding it later in places she hadn't checked. Under pillows, inside shoes, in the freezer, always the same amount, enough to remind her it was still there. When they finally returned to the meeting, they looked smaller. The woman spoke first. "This has gone far enough," she said. "We're done." The teacher met her gaze. "You're not," she replied. "You're just refusing." "We didn't agree to this," the man said sharply. The teacher nodded. "No one ever does," she said. The bell rang once, loud. Someone flinched. "Make it stop," the woman demanded. The teacher's voice didn't rise. "It stops when you pass it on," she said, "not the objects, the knowledge." "We can't," the woman said. "People will take advantage. They always do." "That's not your concern," the teacher replied. "Movement is." The man slammed his hand on the table. "So we're just supposed to give everything away?" "No," she said. "You're supposed to stop hoarding the current." The room went silent. The bell rang again. Longer. The teacher stood. "This is the last time I intervene," she said. "After this, it handles itself." She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "One more thing," she said without turning around. "The longer you resist, the worse the items become. They reflect the reason they were abandoned." The door closed behind her. That night, the chest opened on its own, and for the first time, something inside it tried to leave. The woman woke to the sound of movement downstairs. Not the bell. Footsteps. She lay still, counting, listening for the man beside her. He wasn't there. She found him standing in the kitchen, staring at the open chest. The lid was pushed back. The contents had changed. The shoe was gone. The letters were gone. In their place sat a small metal scale, the kind used for weighing coins. The needle trembled even though nothing touched it. The man reached out, then stopped himself. "Don't," she whispered. He didn't answer. The bell rang once. The scale tipped, and something slid off the counter by itself. The next morning, their neighbor's garage burned. "Electrical fire," the report said. "No injuries, just loss." The couple watched from their driveway, the smell of smoke clinging to their clothes long after the flames were gone. That afternoon, a new item appeared in the chest, a scorched extension cord, still warm. The woman's hands shook. "That's not coincidence," she said. The man sat heavily in a chair. "It's choosing," he replied. They tried to give something away. Not teaching, just donating. They left a box of items at a charity drop. By the time they got home, the chest was full again. Everything they'd dropped off sat neatly inside. That night, the bell rang 3 times. The third ring cracked the glass shade on the lamp. The woman screamed. The man finally said the thing he'd been avoiding. "We should have taught," he said. She looked at him hollow-eyed. "It's too late now." He didn't answer, because the bell had started ringing again, and it didn't stop. The fire was ruled an accident, faulty wiring, old insulation, bad luck. That's what the report said. The group knew better. No one said it out loud, but they all felt the same pull in their chest when the news came through. Something had crossed a line. The older man stopped sleeping after that. Not because of fear, because of guilt. He had taught 3 people by then, walked them through their first sales, watched their relief bloom. And still, the image of that burned garage wouldn't leave him. At the next meeting, only 4 chairs were filled. The couple didn't come. The single mother arrived late, pale and shaken. "There was a backpack on my porch this morning," she said quietly. "The same one from their house." The teacher closed her eyes. "It's spreading," she said. "Because of them?" someone asked. "Because of the pause," she replied. "Because the current keeps meeting resistance." The young woman clenched her fists. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Do we just keep teaching forever?" The teacher met her gaze. "You keep teaching until balance returns," she said, "or until the system chooses a different solution." That landed hard. "What does that mean?" the older man asked. The teacher hesitated. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "the objects stop being satisfied with things." Silence. "They start requiring people," she finished. The room felt too small. That night, the couple's house went dark. Not a blackout, just empty. Neighbors noticed first. The front door open, lights off. No movement. When police entered, they found the chest in the living room. Open. Empty. The bell sat in the center of the floor, cracked clean in half. The couple was never found. Their accounts were untouched. Their cars still parked. Their phones left charging on the kitchen counter. The news called it a disappearance. The teacher called it reassignment. The group stopped questioning her after that. They taught relentlessly, not to get rich, not to feel generous, to survive. They formed smaller groups, shared quietly, passed things on before they had time to settle. The strange items slowed, the mirror stayed put. The cash box went quiet. Nothing new appeared uninvited, almost nothing. One evening, the single mother asked the question they'd all been avoiding. "What happens when we're gone?" she asked. "Who teaches then?" The teacher looked tired. "Someone always does," she said. "And you?" the older man asked. "What happens to you?" She smiled faintly. "I'm still paying for the time I didn't," she said. No one asked what that meant. They didn't want to know, because the system didn't need understanding, only movement. And as long as value kept flowing, nothing else had to. That was the lie they all learned to live with. That if they kept moving things along, nothing else would be taken. For a while, it seemed true. Months passed without incident. The group grew, then divided, then grew again. People talked quietly. They didn't advertise. They didn't celebrate wins. They passed on what they learned the way you pass on a warning, not a gift. The objects stayed ordinary. No bells, no mirrors, no weight in the air. until the teacher missed one meeting. No message, no explanation. They waited. A week passed, then 2. When they went to her house, the door was unlocked. The place was empty, not abandoned, cleared. No furniture, no tools, no records. Just one thing left on the kitchen table, a ledger. Not the chest, not the bell. Something simpler. Inside were names, some crossed out, some circled, some underlined twice. The last page was blank. The older man closed the book slowly. She didn't disappear, he said. She transitioned. The single mother swallowed. So who teaches now? No one answered, because the ledger was already open, and the names at the top were familiar. The next meeting was quieter, smaller. No one stood at the front. They didn't need to. They already knew the rules. Value moves or it settles. Knowledge passes or it curdles. Someone always pays for the pause. The older man took the chair she used to sit in, not because he wanted to, because the space was there, and if it stayed empty too long, something else would notice. The older man didn't call it taking over, he called it sitting down. That was all it was, really. One empty chair that didn't stay empty. No announcement was made, no agreement signed. The ledger stayed on the table during meetings now. No one wrote in it. They didn't need to. The names that appeared did so on their own. New ones, faint at first, then darker. People who had been helped, people who were helping others, people who were starting to slow. The group didn't grow anymore. It multiplied. Small circles, loosely connected, each teaching just enough to keep things moving. Not for profit, not for pride, for pressure relief. The objects never stopped appearing entirely, but they changed. They became ordinary again. Tools that sold cleanly, appliances that worked, parts that fit where they were needed. Nothing lingered. Nothing followed anyone home. That was the reward. Not safety, stability. One night, long after the others had left, the older man sat alone with the ledger. He noticed something the teacher had never pointed out. The names that disappeared weren't erased. They faded, as if something had passed through them and moved on. He thought about the couple, about the bell, about the house that went dark. He understood then what the system actually was. Not punishment, not justice, redistribution, of value, of responsibility, of burden. The system didn't care who you were, only whether you kept things circulating. When value stopped, it pooled. When it pooled, it attracted what didn't want to stay buried. And when no one stepped forward, something else did. The single mother came by one evening after teaching a new group. She looked tired, but lighter. "How long does this last?" she asked. The older man didn't look up from the ledger. "As long as people need it," he said. "And when they don't?" He closed the book. "Then it finds someone else?" he replied. She nodded. That made sense. Because nothing useful ever stays still. Not money, not knowledge, not responsibility. The mistake people made was thinking success meant stopping. It didn't. It meant becoming part of the movement. The ledger stayed open, the chair stayed filled. And somewhere, in a thrift store or a garage or a flea market, someone picked up an item they didn't fully understand yet. Something overlooked, something unfinished, and the system waited. Patient as ever, it didn't announce itself anymore. That was the strangest part. There were no warnings now, no bells, no objects that felt wrong in the hand, only patterns. People who learned quickly, people who passed things on, people whose lives became manageable instead of desperate, and people who didn't. Every so often, the ledger filled itself in overnight. A new name, a familiar one. Sometimes someone would stop coming. Not dramatically, just quietly. Their phone unanswered, their chair empty. The group learned not to ask too many questions. They already knew the answer. The older man never referred to himself as a leader. He didn't have to. He was simply the one who noticed when things slowed, when someone hesitated too long over an item that should have moved on, when teaching turned into guarding, when relief hardened into ownership. That was when he spoke up, not with threats, with reminders. Because the system didn't want obedience, it wanted motion. He taught until his voice grew tired. Then someone else took over for a while. That was how it stayed human. That was how it stayed invisible. Years later, someone new would ask the same question they all eventually asked. Why does this work? And the answer was always the same. Because nothing valuable survives being hoarded, they would say. They never mentioned the chest, or the bell, or the house that went dark. Those stories weren't lessons. They were warnings. The ledger remained, not as a record of profit, but of flow, of hands things passed through, of burdens redistributed just enough to keep the world from tipping. And somewhere, right now, someone is standing in a thrift store aisle or at the edge of a driveway sale, holding something they almost didn't pick up. Something that still wants to be useful. Something that doesn't want to stay where it is. They don't know it yet. But they're about to learn. Because value doesn't disappear, it moves. And if no one guides it forward, it finds its own way.